All right, people, hold on to your seats because the UN just dropped a political bombshell. A panel has officially summoned Nigeria over Nnamdi Kanu. Yep, you heard that right. When the United Nations leans in, things are about to get real. This isn't just courtroom drama. This is international pressure, legal fireworks, and national stability all colliding. Let's break down what's going on and why what happens next could rock Nigeria like a high-tension thriller. Fact 1. The UN panel's warning. Nigeria, you've got questions to answer. A United Nations rights panel has stepped in and formally summoned the Nigerian government to explain its handling of Nnamdi Kanu's detention. This is not a friendly chat. The UN is demanding clarity on alleged rights abuses, medical neglect, and legal irregularities in his case. For Nigeria, this is major. A global body saying, yo, you might be violating human rights here. The move immediately turns domestic legal proceedings into a global spotlight event, raising the stakes immensely. And speaking of what's being challenged, Fact 2 gets personal. It's about Kanu's health, and it's not just politics. Nnamdi Kanu claims his health has deteriorated dramatically in DSS custody. Liver complications, a lump under his arm, dangerously low potassium levels. And he's not shy about pointing fingers. In a letter to the Nigerian Medical Association, the NMA, he accuses DSS-appointed doctors of falsifying his test results, of ignoring serious symptoms, and essentially letting him suffer. If that's not intense enough, he also claims that independent consultants were intimidated and that his life might be on the line if things don't get straightened out. All right, so his health is in question, but who did the court call in to verify? That's where Fact 3 steps in, and things get more complicated. A federal high court judge, Justice James Omotosho, ordered the NMA to set up a 7-member medical panel to assess Kanu's condition and determine whether he's fit to stand trial. That seems like a responsible move, right? But here's the kicker. The panel was supposed to report back within days, yet they missed that deadline. The court actually extended their time by a week because the report still wasn't ready. To many observers, that delay raises red flags about process, credibility, and transparency. And while the panel was scrambling to meet its deadline, Kanu wasn't exactly staying quiet. Fact 4 shows how he escalated his legal war. 4. In a move that feels straight out of a courtroom thriller, Kanu filed a 50 billion naira, that's 50 billion naira lawsuit against the NMA. His claim? The health report the NMA's panel submitted was completely fabricated. He says none of the doctors actually examined him, that the report was cooked up behind closed doors, and that it misled the court into thinking he was medically fit. He's demanding a new, independent exam plus compensation for what he calls a massive affront to his dignity and rights. But Kanu's allegations aren't just legal fluff. Fact 5 digs into how he claimed he was mistreated while in DSS custody. Kanu paints a very grim picture of life in DSS custody. In his letter to the NMA, he accuses DSS doctors of neglecting him, falsifying potassium tests, and ignoring severe symptoms like fainting, fatigue, and chest pain. He also claimed he was chained to a wall for days. Yes, chained to a wall when he was abducted in Kenya and brought to Nigeria. That's not just a health issue, that's a human rights nightmare. And the UN panel is obviously not ignoring these bombshell claims. So if his health was questioned and the report is disputed, who's supposed to testify to all this? Fact 6 brings in some big names. Here's where things get seismic. Kanu has listed a bunch of extremely powerful Nigerians as witnesses for his trial. We're talking weak FCT Minister Governor Uzodinma, former Army Chief T.Y. Danjuma, and ex-Coas Boratai. These are not small players. They're heavyweights. Kanu wants them in court, and the judge has signed those witness summonses. That move signals that the case is not just about his health. It's about the very structure of power in Nigeria. And some of those people are already pushing back. Fact 7 shows how they're responding. One of the names on Kanu's list, Nyesom Week, FCT minister, didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. He says he will only testify if the court explicitly orders him to, refusing to volunteer. That raises eyebrows, because if some of these big names are reluctant, you've got to wonder, how bad are things behind closed doors, and what kind of testimony is Kanu expecting? The political tension here is thick enough to cut with a gavel. Now add the UN pressure to that mix, and you've got a serious pileup. Fact 8 explains who was calling on Nigeria to follow international human rights rules.
International and local watchdogs aren't staying silent. Groups like the Rising Sun Foundation and the Ambassadors for Self-Determination have publicly called on Nigeria to obey UN rights conventions and honor court rulings. They argue Kanu's detention is becoming a major human rights flashpoint, and that ignoring UN directives could be disastrous for Nigeria's reputation and stability. This isn't just legal theater. For many, it's a test of Nigeria's commitment to global human rights norms. So we've got legal battles, health scandals, and political summonses. But where did it all begin? Fact 9 takes us back to Kanu's controversial arrest. Let's rewind. Kanu was earlier arrested in Kenya and then brought back to Nigeria in a move many call extraordinary rendition. Amnesty International, among others, has flagged this as a possible human rights violation, noting the suspicious way he was transferred and his complaints that he was denied full legal counsel during that process. If those claims hold, it's not just a legal case, it's an international incident, a sovereignty question, and a justice crisis all wrapped together. With all that pressure, legal, political, and international, the big question now is, what happens next? That's where Fact 10 comes in. The future isn't just uncertain, it could be earth-shattering. The next few weeks could decide more than just one man's fate. With the UN panel watching, his lawsuit running, key figures summoned, and civil society turning up the heat, Nigeria is at a critical inflection point. Will the NMA's report be retracted? Will the new medical panel reaffirm his ill health? Will Kanu's witnesses show up or back out? And will Nigeria cave or dig in? Whatever happens next could reshape the balance between international scrutiny, national sovereignty, and human rights in one of Africa's most politically charged cases. If you felt this breakdown hit hard, or you're scratching your head wondering how this all plays out, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below. Do you think the UN has the teeth to force Nigeria's hand? Should Kanu's health be reinvestigated? Let me know. This is at Global Pulse News, where we don't just report the news, we unpack it like it's the next blockbuster.